They'll have a final vote around 6 Eastern this evening, and you can see live coverage of that debate on C-SPAN. And, of course, lawmakers working behind the scenes to come up with a spending plan for this budget year. Live Senate coverage right now here on C-SPAN 2.
Senate will come to order. The chaplain, Dr. Barry Black, will lead the Senate in prayer.
Let us pray. Merciful Father, who put into our hearts such deep desires that we cannot be at peace until we rest in you. Remove from our lives anything that would seek to separate us from you. Lord, lead our lawmakers to make courageous decisions based upon conscience and duty. May they refuse to do anything that threatens the long-term security of this nation as they strive to follow the right path as you give them the light to see it. Give them wisdom and courage for the living of these days. Impart your wisdom so they will know what to do, and bestow your courage so that they will possess the resolve to act on what they believe. We pray in your sovereign name. Amen.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will read a communication to the Senate.
Washington, D.C., April 6, 2011. To the Senate, under the provisions of Rule 1, Paragraph 3 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, I hereby appoint the Honorable Kirsten E. Gillibrand, a senator from the state of New York, to perform the duties of the chair. Signed, Daniel K. Inouye, President pro tempore.
Madam President,
The Majority Leader.
we were finally able last night to arrive at an agreement on the Small Business Jobs Bill, at least a way to get rid of some very important amendments that we could have around 4 o'clock tonight, 7 roll call votes. So this morning there'll be a period of morning business until 11 a.m. The time until 10:40 will be equally divided and controlled between the majority and the Republicans. The majority will control the first half. Republicans will control the final half. At 10:40, Senator Ayotte will give her maiden speech in the United States Senate. Madam President, as the deadline looms, our budget negotiations continue nonstop. The Speaker and I met with the President yesterday morning, and we met with one another yesterday afternoon. Like in any ongoing negotiation, the status of those talks is constantly evolving. But I'll give the Senate a snapshot of where we stand at this moment in time. Our bottom line has always been the same. It's this: we want to avoid a shutdown. We want to pass a budget that makes smart cuts that save money, but that doesn't cost jobs. This has been our bottom line throughout this process. So we've made some tough choices. We've made those choices because we know that at this late stage of the game, reality is more important than ideology. We know that sacrifices are the cost of consensus, and we think they're worth it. Our bottom line hasn't changed because our objective hasn't changed. We want to keep the country running and keep the momentum of an economic recovery that's creating jobs. I wish I could say the same about those on the other side of the negotiating table. Republicans' bottom line has changed at almost every turn. First, Republicans refused to negotiate until we tried it their way. We gave the reckless House passed proposal a vote. The Senate resoundingly rejected that vote. Then, once talks began, Republicans staked out their position. They asked for $73 billion in cuts. When we said, let's meet in the middle, they said no. Then we said, in the interest of getting this done, we'll agree to your number. And they still said no. Republicans refused to take yes for an answer. Every time we agree to meet in the middle, they move where the middle is. They said no when we met them halfway. Now they say it's our way or the highway. That's no way to move forward. People ask, why is this so difficult? They ask, can't you just get it done? I understand how they feel, and I share their frustration. But this is why it's so tough. It's like trying to kick a field goal, and the goalposts keep moving. Democrats' bottom line has not changed. Republicans' bottom line hasn't stayed still. Our bottom line hasn't changed because our priorities have not changed. We all want to lower the deficit. But Democrats will not sacrifice seniors' retirement security, women's health, our children's education, our nation's veterans. The cuts we make have to be smart cuts, and those aren't smart. They're radical. We want an agreement that's reasonable and responsible. I wish I could say the same about those on the other side of the negotiating table. They forget that not one of those people led us into a recession, and punishing seniors, women, children, veterans will not lead us to a recovery. Their budget would cost 700,000 jobs and slow economic growth. It would take us backward, not forward. That's as counterproductive as it comes. The point of this entire exercise is to help the economy. Democrats won't stand for a budget that weakens it. Our bottom line, our strongest desire to reach an agreement hasn't changed because our willingness to compromise hasn't changed. We long ago accepted the reality that getting something done means more. I'm sorry, Madam President. We long ago accepted that reality that getting something done means not getting 100% of what we want. We long ago accepted the fact that the only way to reach consensus between a Democratic Senate and a Republican House is to compromise. I wish I could say the same about those on the other side of the negotiating table. The Republicans have demanded a budget that can pass with only Republican votes. Instead of seeking a bipartisan budget, they're actively seeking the opposite. The Republican leadership has a Tea Party screaming so loudly in its right ear that it can't hear what the vast majority of the country demands. The country demands that we get this done. As I've said before, the biggest gap in these negotiations isn't between Democrats and Republicans. It's between Republicans and Republicans. So the Speaker has a choice to make, and not much time to make it. He can either do what the Tea Party wants or what the country needs. Mr. President, I'll close with two pieces of advice we would be wise to heed today. One from American history and one from ancient history. Henry Clay served in both houses of Congress, in the House and in the Senate. He actually held the same seat the Republican leader now holds. He was a senator from Kentucky. He also held the same gavel that Speaker Boehner now holds at 3 different times. Henry Clay served as Speaker of the House. I repeat, on three separate occasions. In his esteemed career, he earned the nickname, the Great Compromiser. So Henry Clay knew what he was talking about when he said that, quote, all legislation is founded upon the principle of mutual concession, close quote. This legislation, this budget, is no exception. But it's important to remember that the most important word in that quote isn't concession, it's mutual. We all have the responsibility to be reasonable, which brings me to the second piece of advice. To everything there is a season. To paraphrase a passage we all know well, a passage much older than the old statesman Henry Clay. There's a time to campaign and a time to govern. There's a time to be partisans and a time to be partners. We stand here with fewer than 72 hours on the clock. It's time to get to work. It's time to get the job done. This is the season for action. Would the Chair now announce morning business, please?
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Under the previous order, the Senate will be in a period of morning business until 11 a.m., with the Senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each. with the time until 10:40 a.m. equally divided and controlled between the two leaders or their designees, with the majority controlling the first half and the Republicans controlling the final half, with the senator from New Hampshire, Ms. Ayotte, recognized at 10:40 a.m.
Madam President,
Senator from Illinois.
it's my understanding the Democrats have the first half of morning business.
Senator is correct.
I ask consent to be recognized in morning business.
Without objection.
And I rise to speak about the issue of Wall Street reform, which I know is near and dear to the senator from New York, who represents Wall Street. I do believe that what Congress achieved last year in Wall Street reform was wise, not only for our nation, but also to avoid the possibility of another recession. There were many fine financial institutions across the United States, including New York. The fact is that many of their practices led us into the recession which we are now experiencing. Well, it was quite a battle last year. Senator Chris Dodd of Connecticut, now retired, led the battle on the floor of the United States Senate to try to make sure that we had the necessary oversight and balance when it came to our financial institutions to avoid the likelihood of another recession. The banks fought back, but in the end, we prevailed. And Senator Dodd passed the measure here in the Senate, and it was passed in the House of Representatives under the leadership of Congressman Barney Frank of Massachusetts. Signed by the President, it really gave us a chance to move forward with oversight, regulation, and reform on Wall Street. It was signed last July by the President, and many of the most important elements of the Dodd-Frank bill will not go into effect until July 21st of this year. Several of them are very important to America and important to me as an individual, because as a senator, I offered an amendment to this bill. It was a controversial amendment, and for the banks, an expensive amendment. For the Wall Street banks and credit card companies, the interchange fee amendment, which I introduced and passed with 64 votes, 17 Republicans and 47 Democrats, was an amendment which will cost the biggest banks and credit card companies in this country up to $1.3 billion a month. Imagine that. In any given year, $15 or $16 billion is being collected by these banks through their credit cards from merchants, retailers, and consumers all across America. From the moment that that bill was signed into law, these Wall Street banks and credit card companies have been involved in an all-out, nonstop campaign to repeal the law. Now, they can't just flat-out repeal it because they know that looks a little too obvious. So instead, what they're calling for is postpone. Just postpone it for 2 years while they study it. That's their argument. They believe we need to look into this a little more closely. Well, the record suggests that they're not after a study. They're after $1.3 billion a month in profit. Turns out it's actually 30 months that the delay would take place, so that's about a $40 billion postponement that the Wall Street banks and credit card companies are asking for. Who pays the $40 billion? Merchants and retailers and customers all across America. That's why the Consumer Federation of America, the leading consumer advocacy group in Washington, supports my amendment and opposes this $40 billion delay, which has been suggested in the amendment that is being offered. Last year, when we passed landmark legislation to reform the debit card swipe fees that are enriching Wall Street banks and crushing businesses and consumers on Main Street, they started organizing to repeal. For years, the banking industry has been engaged in a collusive practice. Banks have let the Visa and MasterCard monopoly credit card companies fix the interchange fee rates that banks receive from merchants each time a debit card is swiped. The so-called swipe fee is a fee that banks get, but they don't set the fees. The credit card companies set them. This is unregulated price fixing by Visa and MasterCard on behalf of thousands of banks, primarily the biggest banks in America. The same banks we bailed out are now coming back here and saying, don't cut into our profits. Don't in any way reform or change the interchange fee that affects merchants, retailers, and consumers. Incidentally, when the Federal Reserve took a look at the interchange fee, that we pay every time you use a debit card, for example, it averages about 40 cents. The actual cost of using the debit card, less than 12 cents. So what they're doing is imposing this fee on every transaction, every place across America. This is unregulated price fixing by Visa and MasterCard. It's a sweetheart deal for the banks, too. According to the Federal Reserve, banks make about $1.3 billion each month, as I mentioned, in debit interchange fees. And the fee rates keep going up, even though the cost of processing continues to drop. Last year, Congress decided that we should place some reasonable limits on Visa and MasterCard. We did this to ensure that they can't use their market power and price-fixing ability to funnel excessive fees to the nation's biggest banks. Congress said if Visa and MasterCard are going to continue fixing interchange rates that merchants pay banks, the rates ought to be reasonable and proportional to the actual cost of processing. It's a narrowly targeted reform, and we made a major exemption of small banks and credit unions. If they had assets of less than $10 billion, they were exempt. You wouldn't know that. They're arguing that this is going to apply to them. I would commend to them reading the law, which specifically exempts them. There are two arguments which have been raised recently in opposition to interchange reform. The first is we need more studies. Now, I know banks and credit card companies believe that interchange reform literally needs to be studied to death, but many studies have already been done. There were at least 7 congressional hearings specifically on interchange fees before we passed the amendment. I chaired one of them. Another 2 hearings on interchange fees have been held since the amendment became law. There were also at least 3 different GAO studies on interchange fees prior to the amendment's passage. It isn't as if this matter hasn't been studied. It has been. That's not all. Economists and payment system experts at the Federal Reserve have been studying interchange fees for years. They put out at least 10 significant reports. Do we need another study? One of them was January of 2010 by Fumiko Hayashi, a senior economist at the Federal Reserve Bank at Kansas City. She did an international comparison of interchange fees in the United States and 12 other countries. Listen to what she found. In general, the United States has the highest debit card interchange fees. The United States has the highest interchange fees for both credit and debit cards among the 13 countries where adoption and usage of payment cards are well advanced. Now, I can see why the banks and credit card companies want to ignore that study. Americans are paying more every time they use plastic than any other of the 13 largest nations in the world that use credit and debit cards. Do you know what the debit fee is in Canada from Visa and MasterCard? 0. 40 cents a transaction for the United States of America. God bless them for treating us so kindly. 0 for Canada. Why? Because the Canadian government spoke up for retailers, merchants, and consumers and said, stop this. It's price fixing. Now we've done the same, and the Wall Street lobby and the credit card lobby are coming down here, hitting hard to repeal this interchange fee reform. There was another study, 2009 paper put forward by the Federal Reserve's Division of Research and Statistics, entitled Interchange Fees and Payment Card Networks. Then there was a 2008 paper by James McAndrews and Shu Wang of Kansas City on the economics of the payment card markets. Their study found, incidentally, privately determined card pricing, adoption and usage tend to deviate from the social optimum, and imposing a ceiling on interchange fees may improve consumer welfare. Kansas City Federal Reserve. They came up with this finding. But the credit card companies ignore it. They want another study. They don't like a study that says interchange fee reform is good for consumers. The Boston Federal Reserve had a study in 2010, found on average every year each cash-using household pays $149 to card-using households. The studies go on, Madam President. The fact of the matter is, I'll put them in the record. I ask unanimous consent that my entire statement be made part of the record. I see several of my colleagues on the floor.
Without objection.
But I want to make one other point as well. Whenever I talk about Wall Street banks and the credit card companies and the cost associated with debit card fees charged to American consumers and retailers, the first thing that I hear is, oh, there he goes again, just defending Walmart. Well, there's no question about it. Walmart's the largest retailer in America. When it comes to the use of credit and debit cards, I'm certainly that they have a larger volume of sales from that than any other. But let's do some comparison here for a moment. According to Forbes.com, in 2010, Walmart, the largest retailer in America, had $17 billion in profits. I ask unanimous consent for 2 additional minutes.
Without objection. For
$17 billion in profits and a 4% profit margin. That sounds like a lot, and it is, but not compared to the big banks. J.P. Morgan Chase, one of the largest issuers of debit cards, had $17.4 billion in profits. That's more than Walmart, incidentally, and their profit margin wasn't 4% like Walmart, it was 15%. This is the same Chase that has said any regulation of interchange fees will force them to raise fees on consumers. One of the most profitable banks in America threatens consumers that if they can't charge the interchange fees that they want to charge, they're going to raise fees on consumers. Isn't that great? Your money or your life when it comes to Chase. Chase has more profits than Walmart and a 15% profit margin. Madam President, I'm going to reserve the balance of my time and let my colleagues take the floor. I will return on this subject. But I want to remind my colleagues, this amendment, this effort by the Wall Street banks and credit card companies to repeal the interchange fee is a $40 billion amendment. $40 billion that will be transferred to the biggest banks in America and credit card companies from consumers and retailers across America. We did the right thing with interchange fee reform. Let's stand by it and say to Wall Street and major card issuers, Visa and MasterCard, they've had enough. They can get a reasonable fee, but not an unreasonable amount out of our economy. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The Republican leader.
I'm going to proceed on my leader time.
Without objection.
Madam President, across the country this morning, Americans are wondering what's going on in Washington this week. They want to know why it's taking so long to fund the government. Americans want to know how we got to this point, and they deserve an answer. So here goes. Each year, the majority party in Congress is responsible for coming up with a budget plan that explains how they're going to pay for all the things that government does. It's not just a good idea, it's the law. Congress has been required to do it since 1974. Well, last year, the Democratic leaders in Congress decided they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to have to publicly defend their bloated spending and the debt that it's creating. So Republicans had to come up with temporary spending bills to keep the government running in the absence of any alternatives and leadership from our friends on the other side. Republicans even passed a bill in the House that would keep the government funded through the rest of the current fiscal year and which takes an important first step toward a smaller, more efficient government that helps improve the conditions for private sector job growth. This House bill would save us billions of dollars on our way to a conversation about trillions. And Congressman Ryan has done a service this week by setting the terms of the larger debate by outlining a plan that puts us back on a path to stability and prosperity. Unfortunately, Democrats have made a calculated decision that they didn't want to have either debate, so they've taken a pass on both. And frankly, it's hard not to be struck by the contrasting approaches to our nation's fiscal problems that we've seen here in Washington this week. On the one hand, you've got a plan by Congressman Ryan that every serious person has described as both honest and courageous. On the other hand, you've got people like the new chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee and the previous Speaker of the House dismissing that plan in the most cartoonish language imaginable. While thinking people have seen in the Ryan plan an honest attempt to tackle our problems head on, ideologues on the left have seen a target to distort while offering no vision of their own to prevent a fiscal nightmare that we all know is approaching. And they still haven't come up with an alternative to the various Republican proposals we've seen to keep the government up and running in the current fiscal year. They've just sort of sat on the sidelines, taking potshots at everything Republicans have proposed while rooting for a shutdown. That's why the Republicans in the House have now proposed another bill this week that will fund the military for the rest of the year, keep the government operating, and which gets us a little closer to the level of spending that even the senior senator from New York has called reasonable. The fact that Democrats are now rejecting this offer, which even members of their own leadership have described as reasonable, is all the evidence you need that Democrats are more concerned about the politics of this debate than keeping the government running. So let's be clear about something this morning. Throughout this entire debate, Republicans have not only said that we prefer a bipartisan agreement that funds the government and protects defense spending at a time when we've got American troops fighting in 2 wars. There's a Republican plan on the table right now that would do just that. Democrats can accept that proposal or they can reject it. But they can't blame anyone but themselves if a shutdown does occur because they've done nothing whatsoever to prevent it. So with the clock ticking, I would once again encourage our Democratic friends to get on board with this proposal and to support the kind of spending cuts that the American people have asked for and that their own leadership has already endorsed. Now, on another matter, later today the Senate will vote on an amendment that one leading newspaper described last week as one of the best proposals for growth and job creation to make it onto the Senate docket in years. More specifically, this amendment, which is based on legislation proposed by Senator Inhofe, would prevent unelected bureaucrats at the Environmental Protection Agency from imposing a new national energy tax on American job creators. Everyone knows that this attempt to handcuff American businesses with new costs and regulations is the last thing these job creators need right now. That's why even Democrats in Congress have sought to secure the same kind of exemptions from the law for favored industries in their own states that we saw others from their party trying to secure for favored constituencies in the health care law. Democrats from auto states tried to have the auto industry exempted. Democrats from farming states tried to have farmers exempted. What these efforts show is that Democrats themselves recognize the dangers of these EPA regulations. Yet instead of just voting for the one amendment that solves the problem, they're hiding behind sham amendments designed to give them political cover. Well, Republicans have a better idea. Let's try to make sure everybody is exempted. Everybody gets the exemption, not just some favored constituency. Let's not pick winners and losers. Let's let America's small business and entrepreneurs compete and grow on a level playing field without any more burdensome government regulations, costs, or red tape. The amendment that I've offered on behalf of Senator Inhofe would do just that. The amendment would give businesses the certainty that no unelected bureaucrat at EPA is going to make their efforts to create jobs even more difficult than the administration already has. So once again, I want to thank Senator Inhofe for his strong leadership on this issue. He's led the way in protecting American jobs from this burdensome proposal with determination and with common sense, and he deserves the credit. I also want to thank Chairman Upton and my good friend Congressman Ed Whitfield from Kentucky for fighting against this effort by the EPA and moving legislation to prevent it over in the House. Finally, on another matter relating to the economy, there are some signs today that the administration is beginning to take seriously a pending trade agreement with Colombia. Republicans have been urging the administration to act on this critical trade deal for months. This agreement would help American businesses compete on a level playing field with businesses overseas. It would help create American jobs, and it would help our relationship with an important ally in Latin America. So hopefully these reports, Madam President, are true, and the President will send this agreement, along with similar agreements related to Panama and South Korea, to Congress soon. This would be some extraordinarily good news for an economy that really needs it. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
From Maryland.
Madam President, business and to comment on the terrible situation that we find ourselves in. We are in a terrible situation. The Republican leader is exactly right. The clock is ticking on a shutdown. But, Madam President, I have a couple of principles as we head into the midnight witching hour on Friday. First of all, my first principle is no shutdown. Let's have a sit-down. Let's not shut down government and cut off the funding for private sector contractors who do business with the government. Let's have a congressional sit-down and arrive at an orderly, rational agreement that does create a more frugal government but does not torpedo our economy. But my second principle is if we shut down the government and federal employees and contractors don't get paid, Congress shouldn't get paid. And not only shouldn't Congress not get paid, no back pay, no way, and no way. But, Madam President, I spoke about the congressional no pay position yesterday. Today, I want to talk about the consequences of the shutdown. I'm against a government shutdown. Shutting down the government breaks faith with federal employees, jeopardizes our economic recovery, threatens the viability of small and medium-sized businesses that do business with the federal government, and even threatens the safety of our families and our economy. That's why I'm for a congressional sit-down, not a shutdown of the federal government. Democrats and Republicans should negotiate over spending cuts. But what's not open for negotiation is whether the federal government is worth keeping open or not. Parties must come together. You know, Madam President, there's a belief that a shutdown will occur only in Washington. Oh, the lights will go out in the Washington Monument. Maybe a museum will be closed here or there. Maybe even a national park will be closed here or there. Both on the Senate floor, the House floor, and even in the media, it's followed by kind of a snicker or even a snarl. How foolish. How they don't understand the functioning of a government of the United States of America. I'm afraid that the lights will go out. I'm afraid that government agencies will be shuttered. I'm concerned that people who work in behalf of the federal government as those contractors, small and medium-sized contractors, disabled veteran contractors, will not get paid. Now, I'm for cuts. I voted for the Democratic package with over $51 billion in cuts. In my own appropriations bill, I reduced agency overhead by 10%. I cut out lavish conferences and so on by 25%. I could illuminate that year by year. But, you know, cuts alone are not a strategy to reduce a deficit. What I don't want is to make sure that our government will not be funded. There are other ways of doing it. And I will talk about that more tomorrow, about how we can actually pay for this. But today I want to talk about the consequences of what we're doing. There's nobody on the Senate floor talking about it. I appreciate the minority leader, but on my side, if nobody's going to talk about it, I'm going to talk about it. A possible government shutdown creates uncertainty in consumer confidence and further damages the economy. Mark Sandy, the chief economist of Moody's, says that it will damage the confidence in the economy and could result in the loss of 700,000 jobs. Well, let me tell you. And everybody says, oh, well, that's government. Oh, well, that's government. I'm going to talk about, oh, well, that's government in a minute. But let's take private sector. Let's take that snickering and snarling over national parks. Do you know that the national parks, we have 365 of them, 49 states, 300 million visitors. Do you know that those national parks generate 270,000 private sector jobs in campgrounds, restaurants, gas stations, vendors to the national parks? Oh, yeah, you can laugh about closing down Yellowstone, and maybe that's not the explosive thing. 270,000 jobs, mostly in the West. I didn't hear that the Jets had such a low unemployment rate that they don't give a darn. Local communities at national parks lose $14 million per day. So that's the national park argument. Let me go to the contractors. I represent the state of Maryland, where we have a lot of contractors. Take Goddard Space Agency, 3,000 civil servants that do everything from help run the Hubble telescope to do in science to are figuring out how we can fix the satellites through robots in the sky. But there are 6,000 contractors. 6,000 contractors. Some of them are small business, 8A contractors working the way up. Many of them, some of them are women. Many of them are veterans who started small to medium-sized business. These people, if there is a government shutdown, will not get paid. Hello, colleagues. This is not only going to happen in my state, it's going to happen in your state. This was a major article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about what the shutdown means to the private sector. Well, let's wake up here and let's move more quickly to this sit-down. Now, I want to talk about essential versus non-essential. You know, Madam President, in my state, I represent over 100,000 federal employees, 3 of whom are Nobel Prize winners I'll talk about in a minute. Nobel Prize winners who are civil servants. And that's not even the gang at Hopkins or University of Maryland. That is the 3 Nobel Prize winners are actual civil servants. Now, under this shutdown that we're heading for, they're going to be told they're non-essential. We have a Nobel Prize winner at NIST for the development of new work on laser light. Secretary Chu was his partner. We have a Nobel Prize winner at NIH who won the Nobel Prize for proteins and cellular communication that could lead to a cure for cancer, and a Nobel Prize winner at Goddard in physics. I'm not going to call their names. I don't want to feel awkward. But what am I going to do midnight Friday? Am I going to call up these 3 Nobel Prize winners and say, hey, guys, you're non-essential. We know you could be in the private sector making millions of dollars, but you're staying here to do research, to save lives, save the planet, and lead to saving our economy. But hey, guys, you're non-essential. In other countries, they carry you around on their shoulders and so on. But here, no, we're told they're non-essential. And it's not only Nobel Prize winners, it's all the other people who are working. We're going to turn out the lights at the National Institutes of Health. We're going to say to a researcher, I know you're working on that cure for cancer. I know you're working on that cure for Alzheimer's or autism or arthritis, sticking just with the A words. But you know what? Washington, the Congress says you're non-essential. Hey. And then what about Social Security? I have over 10,000 people work at the Social Security Administration. You say, well, my God, that's a lot. That's 24/7 to make sure that all functions properly and efficiently. We have the lowest overhead of any, quote, insurance company in America. But these lights are going to be shuttered at the Social Security, not only in Senator Barb and Senator Ben Cardin's state, but it's also going to be shuttered, Madam President, in your state. When people want to come to apply for benefits they're eligible for, when people who are disabled want to apply for those benefits, they're going to come to a shuttered Social Security office. And they're going to be told they're not essential. Well, then let's wait till Monday morning. Aren't they going to come to work fired up, ready to work for America, ready to help America be great again? We are American Essential. That goes on at NIH, Social Security, the National Institutes of Standards that come up with new ideas. And then look at commerce. I represent the great port of Baltimore. Ships are going to come into the port. Who's going to inspect their cargo? Traffic coming into airports. Who's going to inspect their cargo? But oh no, we're going to tell them they're non-essential. Well, I'm telling you, Madam President, this is not going to be good. But you know what's not really good? Not only the consequences, but the way we're functioning here. Madam President, hello? Madam President, maybe, I don't know if my speech is not that attention-getting, but could I have your attention?
The Senator has consumed 10 minutes.
Well, then my time is up. But, look, maybe the Senate's not paying attention, but the American people are paying attention. And I'm telling you, this is a situation of enormous, negative consequences. And I think we're going to rue the day at the way we're functioning here. We need to come to the table, and we need to sit around and act like rational human beings. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Senator from New Hampshire.
Madam President, as Congress and the Obama administration grapples with how to responsibly address our long-term deficit, something that the senator from Maryland has talked so eloquently about, we need to remember why it's so important to get on a path to balanced budgets. We need to address the long-term deficit because this deficit is a threat to America's future prosperity. Economic growth and jobs, that's why the deficit matters. The deficit is not just some math problem where it's solved if the numbers add up right. The choices we make, which spending programs we cut, which tax expenditures we eliminate, where we continue to boost investment, all of this matters. And it matters because the deficit is currently a threat to the overarching challenge that faces our country, and that is how do we keep America and our economy competitive. We can't compete with India and China for low-wage manufacturing jobs. That's not our future. America's future is in continuing to be the global leader in science and technology. America makes the best, the most innovative products and services, and that ingenuity and excellence is our chief economic strength as a nation. But right now we're in danger of losing that edge. Science, technology, engineering, and math, what we call the STEM fields, are the skills that drive innovation. And jobs in the STEM fields are expected to be the fastest growing occupations of the next decade. However, unfortunately, not enough of our students are pursuing an education in STEM subjects to keep up with the increased demand. And for those students that do pursue education in STEM fields, right now they're being outperformed by international competitors. Studies show that by the end of 8th grade, students in the U.S. are 2 years behind their international peers in math. American students rank 21st in science and 25th in math among industrialized countries. In addition, the U.S. has produced a declining number of PhDs in science and engineering compared to the European Union and China over the past 3 decades. So it's clear that to remain competitive internationally, we must encourage and strengthen our supply of STEM-trained graduates. That's why this week I introduced, along with Senators Klobuchar, Kerry, Begich, Coons, and Lita Reed, the Innovation Inspiration School Grant Program to bolster our nation's ability to compete in the global economy. This legislation would provide new incentives for our schools to think outside the box and embrace extracurricular and non-traditional STEM education programs. It establishes a competitive grant program to encourage schools to partner with the private sector, both for financial support and to provide mentors who serve as guides and role models to students. Now, I'm proud that New Hampshire is home to the first robotics program, which is an example of how these extracurricular STEM programs can boost student learning in the fields. In fact, research shows that 99% of students who participate in the first robotics competition graduate high school, almost 90% go on to college, and once in college, these students are nearly 7 times more likely to major in engineering, twice as likely to major in computer science, and they are significantly more likely to obtain a postgraduate degree. These programs speak for themselves. I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this important legislation to inspire our students to become scientists, engineers, computer programs, and mathematicians, because our country's economic future depends on it. And, Madam President, I will submit my entire statement for the record.
Without objection.
I yield the floor.
From Kansas.
Madam President, I'm going to speak for approximately 4 minutes during morning business. I had originally intended on 15, but I'm going to do that tomorrow on another subject. But if I could be recognized for 4 minutes, that's my...
Without objection.
I thank you, Madam President. Madam President, changing the subject a little bit, I know it's pretty serious business talking about a government shutdown and things of this nature that affect all Americans, and I certainly hope we can reach some accommodation. I just want to do a little bragging in behalf of my home state. As of this morning, we're pretty proud of our basketball heritage in Kansas. But I note that we have not received national recognition to the extent that I think we should in regards to a recent accomplishment that I'd like to highlight. So I rise today to congratulate the Wichita State University Shockers. Shockers won the 2011 Men's National Invitation Tournament in the Big Apple, the championship up in New York City. In claiming the championship trophy, why Wichita State set the school record with 29 victories in a season. And Wichita State advanced to the NIT championship with 4 straight wins in the tournament. They beat the University of Nebraska in the first round, Virginia Tech in the second round, the College of Charleston in the quarterfinals, Washington State University in the semifinal, and finally the University of Alabama in the championship game. All of these teams have good basketball teams, and Wichita State came out on top. Graham Hatch outstanding player was named the NIT's most outstanding player and a member of the all-tournament team, while Garrett Stutz was also named to the all-tournament team as well. Wichita State and head coach Greg Marshall were not only successful on the court, but in the classroom as well. Earlier this year, Coach Hatch and Garrett Stutz were named to the 2011 Missouri Valley Conference Scholar Athlete First and Honorable Mention teams, respectively. So I congratulate the Wichita State University Shockers, their head coach, Greg Marshall, the athletic director, Eric Sexton, a good friend of mine, the Wichita State University president, Don Beggs. Don, you're back again, and you certainly did us proud. Specifically, I want to congratulate each member of the team for an exemplary season: Gabe Blair, Derek Brown, J.T. Durley, Aaron Ellis, Jerome Hamilton, Graham Hatch, Trey Jones, David Kiles, Terry Murray, Iman Orupki, Joe Ragland, Tyler Richardson, Ben Smith, Garrett Stutz, Randall Valtravers, Josh Walker, and Demetric Williams. I say to the team, if I have mispronounced your name, I am terribly sorry. You certainly did not do anything wrong in the tournament in terms of winning the NIT. And congratulations to all of the Shocker basketball fans. I simply would add that the coach has made a decision to stay at Wichita State. Good news for Kansas, good news for Wichita State, and an exemplary action on the part of the coach after a very successful team effort and winning the NIT and then staying at Wichita State University. So, good news for Kansas, good news for Wichita State, and good news all the way around. By the way, we're not going to shut down the team. They're going to keep on fighting. And I think the signal there was not 4 quarters and let's go play hard, but that the 4 minutes are up.
Right.
So I yield back the balance of my time. Madam President, I know that a quorum is not here in the Senate of the United States, and would like to bring that to the attention of the President.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Madam President.
Senator from Wyoming.
Madam President, I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I come to the floor today as a doctor who's practiced medicine in Wyoming for about 25 years. And during that time, I was medical director of something called the Wyoming Health Fairs, where we provide low-cost blood screening for people for early detection and early treatment of problems and medical problems, because we know one of the things that was attempted to be solved with the debate and the discussion on health care was to have people involved in their own health care decisions and early detection as well as prevention of disease. So I was at a health fair last weekend in Worland, Wyoming, in Washakie County, had a chance to visit with a number of folks there who were attending the fair, also people with small businesses. And so the first thing I'd like to do is congratulate this body and specifically congratulate Senator Johans from Nebraska for the repeal of the 1099 form regulations, which significant burden to small businesses all around the country. I also come to the floor as someone who has practiced medicine and has been watching very closely with this health care law, and it's one that I believe is bad for patients, bad for providers, the nurses and the doctors who take care of those patients, and bad for the American taxpayers, because I think this is going to add significantly to our growing debt problem, and these are things that need to be addressed. But one of the parts of the health care law, the 2,700-page law that was passed, is dealt with something called accountable care organizations. And those are intended to help people coordinate care and have that coordinated care increase people's health and early detection of problems and help minimize problems, but also attempted to help save money. Well, the 6 pages of the health care law that had to deal with accountable care organizations has resulted in a release of regulations on the 31st of March of 429 pages of regulations, which will have a significant impact on restructuring the way that medicine is practiced in the United States. One of the concerns is that I look at this in terms of our growing debt is that the administration is bragging that the regulations save Medicare money, about $960 million total, best-case scenario, over a 3-year period of time. So savings of less than $1 billion, a restructuring of the way medicine is being practiced, a savings of less than $1 billion at a time where Medicare will be spending over those 3 years over $1.5 trillion. So savings of less than $1 billion on an expenditure of over $1.5 trillion. The other thing that was so interesting watching this administration is they've come out with a statement about regulations. Small business people that I've talked to in Worland last weekend at the health fair will tell you that increased government regulations add to the cost of doing business, make it harder for them to hire more people, and it's specifically related to the increased costs. So then it was interesting to see the administration saying that an increase in labor demand due to regulations may have a stimulative effect that results in a net increase in overall employment. The administration apparently believes that if you increase the rules and regulations on businesses, it's going to make it better for them, when they will tell you universally it will make it worse. Additionally, Madam President, I come to the floor because last Friday night the Department of Health and Human Services released their new next round of Obamacare waivers. You know, we've talked about those in the past on this floor as part of a doctor's second opinion, that if this health care law is so good, why do millions and millions of Americans say we can't live under this? And the administration agrees and grants them waivers. So this past weekend, Secretary Sebelius added another 128 waivers covering another 300,000 Americans to say no. For the next year, you get a 1-year waiver. You don't have to live under the mandates of Obamacare. So now we're at a point where the total number of waivers granted has been over 1,000. covering 2,930,000 people. You say, wow, what's the breakdown of those people? Who are they? How can they get those waivers? Well, it's interesting in this country where union workers are just a small percentage of the total workforce, 49%, almost half of all of the waivers, have been granted to people who get their insurance through the unions. Now, I just looked at this list that came out, and it's interesting because one of the waivers that has been granted for 13,000 employees, enrollees, is the United Food and Commercial Workers Unions. So let's see what we can find out about them. If we go to their website and go to the area that deals with health care, what it says is, thanks to your hard work, this is to the people in the union, thanks to your hard work over the past year, Congress passed a health care reform bill that was signed into law by President Obama. They say this landmark reform is a hard-fought victory for the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. Well, wait a second, Madam President. These are the same people that went in and asked for and got from the Secretary of Health and Human Services a waiver so they don't have to live under it. Now, it's interesting, if you go to this website, you can click to other things, and what you can find is that you can actually watch a video on the website of the people that just got a waiver, a video of the members of this union, quote, rally and talk about health care reform. Oh, the health care reform, they're rallying for it, but they don't want it to apply to them. Secretary of Health and Human Services says, that's fine, you can have a waiver. Oh, Madam President, you can actually see pictures of union members taking action on health care reform, but it's not the action of applying for the waiver, a waiver they've just been granted by the Secretary of Health and Human Service. Now it says, call your members of Congress to thank them for passing real reform. Oh, you're supposed to thank the members of this body for passing something, but then they've applied for a waiver that's been granted for over 13,000 members who get insurance through this program. And then they ask you can also check an area to read the background information on this union's advocacy of health care reform. Advocacy for a program that they wanted to force down the throats of the American people, but yet, Madam President, don't want to live under themselves. Madam President, this health care law is bad for this country. It is bad for our patients. It is bad for our health care providers, and it's bad for taxpayers. And the union members who absolutely lobbied for it are now saying, now that they've read the bill, now that they know what's in the law, they're saying they don't want it to apply to them. So much so that one of the unions that have gotten a waiver, on their recent website, it said, we are challenged by how to implement the law under prevailing circumstances. Well, the prevailing circumstances are the law that they wanted passed. It says the trustees of the fund have no ability to secure additional contributions needed to cover the increased costs of providing these required, Madam President, required by the people on the other side of the aisle that voted for this, required additional benefits. It says the trustees are requesting a waiver from HHS to preserve the annual benefit limitation now in place for the part-time plan of benefits to minimize the cost impact of transitioning to the requirements of the Reform Act. Well, what it basically says is that these folks who want the waiver are saying what I've been saying on this floor since the beginning of the debate, that this is going to be bad for taxpayers and the people, and it's going to drive up the cost of care, it's going to drive up the cost of insurance, in spite of the President's promise that if we pass this, families would see premiums drop by $2,100. In spite of the President's promise that if you like your plan, you can keep it. What we're seeing for the people who proudly lobbied for this is they don't want it to apply to them. They realize now that it is going to cause their plans to have significant problems. And Madam President, I believe that every American ought to be able to have a waiver. Every American ought to not have to live under these health care laws. To me, it's unaffordable, it's unmanageable, and I believe it is unconstitutional. And that's why I come to the floor, as I have every week, with a doctor's second opinion, that we must repeal and replace this health care law. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.